Her daughter-in-law asked her to wait in the garage so the house wouldn't feel crowded. Lorraine Parker, widowed homeowner and retired appraiser, didn't argue. She sat beside holiday bins and broken treadmills while they laughed over wine inside her living room. By sunrise, the deed was in her purse, the furniture was on a truck, and the locks were scheduled for change. They'd mistaken silence for surrender, but when she reclaimed every inch, room by room, they learned who the house had always belonged to. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The sky over Charlotte was the kind of Carolina blue that made shutters pop and porches glow. Lorraine Parker pulled into the driveway 10 minutes early, her trunk full of groceries and her blouse pressed crisp. She always arrived early, raised that way. The invitation had said, just family, casual, but she'd still brought homemade potato salad, 2 cartons of ice cream, and a tray of baked beans she'd simmered since 6 a.m. Ben's SUV was already parked crookedly near the mailbox, one tire half on the lawn. She said nothing. Just parked in front of the garage, popped the trunk, and started unloading. The front door opened. Alyssa stepped out, phone in one hand, her other clutching a designer tumbler. She wore linen pants too white for barbecue, and a smile stretched just enough to qualify. "Oh, Lorraine, you're early," she said, as if that were a problem. Lorraine gave a polite nod. "Wanted to get the food set up before it got too warm." Alyssa's eyes flicked to the bags in her hands. "That's sweet. Just, do you mind actually waiting in the garage for a bit while we finish setting up? The house just feels full right now." Lorraine blinked. The garage. Her garage. Ben had moved in just for a few months 5 years ago. Somehow it had become their home. She had never pressed them for rent, never took back the keys. That had been kindness, and kindness, she was learning, had a short shelf life. "Of course," Lorraine said. Alyssa turned with relief before she'd finished the sentence. "Thanks so much," she tossed over her shoulder, already stepping back inside. The door closed with a soft finality. Lorraine stared at it for a moment, then made her way to the side door, shifting the bag of ice cream slightly to keep it from melting. The garage was humid, cluttered, and airless. A broken elliptical leaned against a dusty fridge. Ben's old college posters curled in their frames. Boxes of holiday decor teetered on wire shelving. The only chair was a plastic folding one tucked beneath a pile of flattened Amazon boxes. She cleared a spot, sat down slowly, and set the ice cream at her feet. Time passed thickly. A weed whacker in the neighbor's yard buzzed and stopped. A sprinkler ticked somewhere out front. From inside, muffled laughter, glasses clinking, screen door slapping open and closed. No one came. 28 minutes. She counted. No one came. She didn't knock, didn't call out. Lorraine simply waited, hands folded neatly in her lap, ankles crossed. She could hear Alyssa's voice inside, bright and brittle. Someone made a joke about retirement freedom, and the table erupted. She was folding the edge of a paper napkin in her purse when the door creaked open. Callie stood there in a cotton dress, her hair in braids. 11 years old, holding a Sprite can like it was sacred. "Grandma?" she said. "Why are you out here?" Lorraine smiled, gentle but unbent. "Just giving the house some space." Callie frowned, then looked over her shoulder like she might get in trouble just for noticing. She stepped forward anyway and held out the Sprite. Cold, beating at the sides. "I got it from the downstairs fridge. It's the good kind, the real sugar one." Lorraine took it with both hands. "Thank you, sweetheart." Callie hesitated. "Do you want to come inside now?" Lorraine looked toward the sliver of sunlight in the doorframe, the voices still floating in from the kitchen. She glanced down at the can in her hands, condensation trickling along the label. "No," she said gently, "I'm just fine here for now." Callie stood beside her for a minute. Just stood. Then she nodded like she understood something that hadn't been said out loud. "I'll come back and check later," she whispered. Lorraine smiled. "I know." Callie slipped back inside, the door closing softly behind her. Lorraine took one sip of the Sprite, then she set it down. Warm now, forgotten. She reached into her handbag, pulled out a folded envelope labeled Original Title, Parker Residence. She placed it on her lap. Her fingers rested lightly on top of it, and she waited. But not for them. Not anymore. The next morning, Lorraine sat at her kitchen table, the one still tucked in the breakfast nook of her friend Hannah's house, where she'd been staying off and on since. The temporary arrangement had stretched into its 5th year. A thick folder sat in front of her, worn edges, yellow post-its blooming from its spine like petals with purpose. She opened it to the first page. Property title, 310 Remington Lane. Owner, Lorraine M. Parker. Date of transfer, September 14, 1992. Reaffirmed under joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, July 2008. Amended to sole ownership, November 2011, 2 months after Michael died. Her finger hovered over her late husband's signature, steady, unmistakable. They hadn't read this page, not once. Ben and Alyssa had moved in after Ben's 3rd layoff. Lorraine remembered the phone call, his voice too casual. Alyssa's chipper tone piped in from the background. "Just a couple months, Mom, until we find our footing again." That footing had grown roots, right into her floors. Lorraine closed the folder and picked up the phone. It rang once. "Mr. Rivas?" came the voice on the other end, steady, familiar. "Good morning," Lorraine said. "Just a quick question." "Shoot. I never signed over the title, correct? To Ben or Alyssa?" "No, ma'am. We kept ownership in your name specifically. You said, verbatim, he needs a place to stay, not a place to own." Still rings clear in my files. Lorraine allowed herself the faintest smile. "And any paperwork showing transfer, deed of gift, or sale?" "None exists. If they think otherwise, they're welcome to be surprised." She hung up gently, then reached into a second file. Utilities. Electric, water, gas, internet, roof repair, tree removal, pest control, every bill, every signature, hers, all paid, all filed, by her. The garage door from yesterday played in her memory, not slamming, just shutting her out, like a guest in her own name. A knock at the side door broke her reverie. "Let myself in," Hannah called, pushing through with a box of Panera and a look that said, "I know that face." She slid into the chair across from Lorraine and popped the lid off a blueberry muffin. "You look like you're assembling a case." "I'm just organizing," Lorraine said. "Organizing what? Your legacy or their eviction?" Lorraine tapped the top of the folder. Hannah raised an eyebrow. "You always told me the house wasn't worth the fight." "I said it wasn't worth a verbal fight," Lorraine said. "Paper fights are cleaner." She turned the folder toward Hannah, flipping to a page where Alyssa's latest Instagram post showed their backyard labeled, "Our Peaceful Corner of Home." Hannah snorted. "Let me guess," she said, reaching for her tea. "They never read the fine print." "They never read the title," Lorraine replied. A silence passed. Not heavy, not sad, strategic. "So," Hannah said, tearing the muffin in half, "what are we doing?" Lorraine looked up, eyes calm and cold like a winter lake. "We're clearing a little space." She closed the folder, then opened a clean notebook. First page blank. She wrote 3 words at the top. "What's mine?" Beneath it, she began a list. Dining room table, grandmother's mirror hallway chest, oil painting of Cypress Bay china set, boxed in 2019, still unused. The pen moved slowly, but with clarity, not as a warning, as a boundary. Hannah leaned back. "You want help?" Lorraine didn't pause. "Yes." Hannah raised her paper cup in a toast. "To clearing space." Lorraine clinked her own against it. "And to filling it. Properly." At the edge of the table, Lorraine's phone buzzed. A message from Ben. "Mom, can we talk later?" "Alyssa's upset about something. Not sure what happened yesterday." Lorraine didn't answer. She pressed the screen dark, then picked up the notebook, added one more item, garage square footage, reclaimable. She underlined it, once. The wine night started at 7 sharp. Lorraine hadn't been invited, but she wasn't supposed to notice that. She had stepped out of her own house for a walk after dinner, something she rarely did after dusk. When she returned, her key still turned the lock smooth, but the living room didn't feel like hers anymore. Alyssa's friends were scattered across the sectional, heels off, glasses full, laughter sharpened by Chardonnay. Scented candles had been lit without asking. Someone had replaced Lorraine's ceramic coasters with mirrored ones shaped like leaves. She stepped through the side door to avoid walking past them. No one said hello. From the hallway near the laundry room, Lorraine heard it. Alyssa, voice turned just loud enough for theatrical intimacy. "We're still trying to fix it up," she said. "It's basically ours, but it still has a few of her heirlooms. I swear half this place is haunted by floral upholstery and sentimental wood." A burst of laughter. Lorraine didn't move. She looked into the living room, past the mosaic of glass and wine and assumption. Her eye moved slowly across the space. The cherrywood armoire her father built in 1956. The mahogany coffee table she refinished herself the summer after Michael died. The art print of Cypress Bay from their 20th anniversary trip. Even the woven throw across the couch, stitched by her late mother's hands, folded as if it were decoration, not memory. Outdated heirlooms. She stepped back into the kitchen, pulled out her small legal pad, and wrote in quick strokes, "Armoire, 1956 coffee table, refinished 2012 Bay print, Michael's gift woven throw, Mom, 1983. The list expanded in quiet urgency. That night, once the voices upstairs had dulled into half-drunk stories about spa days and book clubs, Lorraine stepped onto the back porch and called Mr. Rivas. He answered on the third ring. "Lorraine," he said, "everything okay? If I remove items from the house that I paid for and never gifted, am I in the clear?" He didn't even pause. "Unless there's written proof you gave them away, they're legally yours. I can remove them without notice? As long as you're not selling shared assets or damaging the home, yes. And since the deed's still in your name, you technically don't owe them explanation." "Good," she said. "Planning something?" She didn't answer. Just closed her eyes and let the weight of strategy settle across her shoulders like armor. The next morning, Ben was hunched over his tablet at the kitchen island, chewing cereal like it required concentration. He was scrolling through furniture websites, a coffee ring bleeding into the corner of Lorraine's magazine. "Hey, I meant to tell you," he said, not looking up. "Alyssa's thinking of hiring someone to help redecorate. You know, modernize things a bit. Not replace, just freshen." Lorraine waited. He went on, "It won't be much. We'll just use the home budget card. That okay?" Lorraine sipped her tea. That home budget card was connected to her account. He'd added himself to it 4 years ago to handle grocery runs. She'd never revoked it. Hadn't needed to. Until now. "What kind of freshening?" she asked softly. Ben shrugged. "You know, new couches, maybe different art. Alyssa says it still feels old in here." She looked at him. Really looked. The lines around his eyes had deepened, but not from wisdom. From avoidance. She set her teacup down gently. "Well," she said, "some things age. Others accumulate." He blinked. "Huh?" Lorraine smiled. "Don't worry, I'm taking care of it." He nodded, distracted. "Great, that's great." She rose from the table and walked into the living room, this time not looking past anything. She stood in the center of it, still as architecture. Her fingers hovered over the old bay print frame, then moved to the armoire's carved edge. She took inventory, not just of things, but of ownership. Upstairs, Alyssa's voice floated down again, laughing. Lorraine opened her notebook, added one more item. "This room, spoken for." Lorraine began with the mirror. It was an antique, beveled glass in a walnut frame, once hung in her mother-in-law's front hallway and passed down on their 10th anniversary. Alyssa had moved it to the guest bathroom 2 years ago, framing it between a eucalyptus bundle and a framed quote that read, "Good vibes only." Lorraine took it down early Tuesday morning. No fanfare, no noise. She wrapped it in one of Michael's old army blankets and slid it into the trunk of her car. No one noticed. Next came the silver flatware, real silver, monogrammed with the original Parker family crest, stored in a velvet-lined box beneath the buffet, untouched since the Thanksgiving. Alyssa had insisted on disposables for ease. Lorraine packed the box during an afternoon when Alyssa was at a Pilates class and Ben was working from the patio with his earbuds in. She moved slowly, carefully, but without hesitation. That evening, she pulled into a narrow U-Haul storage facility on the south side of town. The clerk barely looked up as she signed the lease on a 10-by-8 unit under her maiden name. "Storing anything fragile?" he asked. "Just history," she replied. Hannah met her there an hour later, wearing gardening gloves and a look that said, "Don't bother with small talk." They slid the mirror against the padded wall and stacked the flatware behind a labeled tote of family photo albums. "You sure you want to do this in stages?" Hannah asked. Lorraine locked the unit and tested the handle twice. "In war," she said, "you test the fences before you charge the hill." The next item was a set of hardbound books, first editions of Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, and James Baldwin, that had once lined the built-in shelves in the living room. Alyssa had boxed them up during a recent aesthetic purge, claiming the colors clashed with the minimalist vibe. Lorraine removed them from the attic storage without a word and slid them one by one into canvas totes. She placed them gently in the trunk beside the silver. Still, no one noticed, except Callie. Saturday morning, as Lorraine was wiping down the sideboard, Callie peeked around the dining room door. "Grandma?" she asked. "What happened to the pretty mirror in the guest bathroom?" Lorraine turned, drying her hands on a dish towel. "It's just somewhere it'll be respected," she said with a wink. Callie grinned, satisfied with the answer, then skipped back toward the stairs. Ben noticed something, eventually. Not the missing items, but the rhythm of Lorraine's days. "You're always moving stuff around lately," he said one morning, pouring himself a third cup of coffee while scrolling his phone. She glanced up from the notepad she'd started calling the archive. "Just decluttering in my old age," she said. He chuckled, distracted. "Guess it's good you're finally letting go." She smiled and nodded, because letting go was exactly what she was doing. By Thursday, the storage unit contained 1 antique mirror, 2 canvas totes of signed books, 3 boxes of flatware, 1 oil painting, wrapped in archival paper, a grandfather clock pendulum, removed from its body, waiting. Lorraine stood in the narrow unit with Hannah that evening, arms crossed, the air cool and slightly metallic. "Phase 1?" Hannah asked. Lorraine nodded. "Complete." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lorraine reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded index card. She handed it to Hannah without speaking. Hannah read the handwritten line aloud. "Next, furniture, Saturday, 5 a.m. She didn't ask questions, just folded the card, tucked it into her own purse, and nodded once. They left the unit together, locking the door behind them. Outside, the streetlight flickered once. Inside, the past waited, stacked, boxed, and ready. The sky was still ink dark when Lorraine pulled into the driveway. Saturday, 4:58 a.m. No porch light, no motion, just the hollow quiet of a home asleep, still smug in its borrowed comfort. She stepped out, wearing navy slacks, a pressed blouse, and the soft-soled shoes she'd worn to Michael's memorial. The keys didn't rattle. She held them tight. By 5:02, the front door was unlocked. By 5:06, the truck arrived. 2 movers stepped out, quiet, respectful men in black jackets, their gloves tucked into their belts. Lorraine greeted them with a clipboard and a typed inventory labeled "Property of Lorraine M. Parker, do not detain." They nodded and began. First, the armoire. Rolled carefully on a padded dolly, blankets wrapped tight around its curved legs. Then the coffee table. Then the framed Cypress Bay print, boxed and labeled "Fragile. Artwork." The hallway chest went next. Lorraine supervised each lift, each turn, each load into the truck. Her checklist in hand, her signature on every tag. The sun was barely a suggestion on the horizon when the first scream cut through the quiet. "Alyssa, what is going on?" She barreled down the stairs in an oversized t-shirt and designer slippers, mascara smudged from the night before. The movers froze. Lorraine didn't. She turned slowly from the dining room, where the last of the china set was being wrapped. "Good morning," she said evenly. Alyssa's mouth opened, closed. Then, Are you moving out? Lorraine reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document, laminated, notarized, pristine. She held it out like an answer sheet. Alyssa didn't take it, just stared. It's the deed, Lorraine said. The house is mine. Has always been. I'm not moving out. The movers resumed. What are you even taking? Alyssa demanded, stepping toward the truck. Everything that belongs to me, Lorraine said. Which, it turns out, is most of this. Ben! Alyssa shrieked. Ben! Footsteps thundered upstairs. Ben appeared, shirtless and confused, rubbing sleep from his eyes. What the hell is going on? Your mother is clearing out the entire living room, Alyssa cried. Ben turned to Lorraine. Mom, what is this? She handed him the deed. He stared at it like it had teeth. This doesn't mean you can just— I can, she said. And I am. Alyssa grabbed her phone. I'm calling the police. Lorraine didn't flinch. Good. They'll clarify it for you. By 5:41 a.m., a cruiser pulled into the driveway. Officer Ruiz stepped out, mid-30s, calm, clipboard already in hand. He took one look at the documents Lorraine provided and raised an eyebrow. She's the sole owner, he told Ben and Alyssa flatly. All documentation checks out. But she didn't give us notice, Alyssa stammered. She doesn't have to. She's not a landlord. This isn't an eviction. She's reclaiming her own property. Ben sagged against the porch rail. Officer Ruiz looked at Lorraine. You're clear to continue, ma'am. Just document everything removed. I have, she said. He tipped his cap. Alyssa stood frozen as the movers lifted the last piece, the embroidered settee Lorraine had recovered by hand in 1989. She watched it vanish into the truck like a throne being carried off by quiet revolution. You're ruining everything, she hissed. No, Lorraine said, stepping into the sunlight as the dawn finally broke, washing the house in pale gold. I'm removing what was mine, from people who forgot it ever was. Ben opened his mouth. Lorraine cut him off with a look. The truck door shut, the list was checked, and Lorraine, without raising her voice, without touching a thing that wasn't hers, had taken back a house still warm from their sleep. She turned to Officer Ruiz. Thank you for your time. He nodded. Rare we get a call this early and leave impressed. Lorraine stepped into the truck's cab to ride with the items to storage. She looked once, only once, at the house as it receded in the side mirror. Behind her, Alyssa stood barefoot on the porch, still clutching her phone. Ben sat on the steps, elbows on knees, head in his hands. Lorraine reached into her purse and slid out her notepad. At the top of a new page, she wrote, War declared. Victory pending. She underlined it. Twice. By Sunday afternoon, the internet knew. Alyssa's post went live at 2:14 p.m., a close-up photo of a bare living room corner, and the caption, Some wounds don't come from strangers. They come from people who raised you, then rip away your home without warning. Displaced, just family can hurt. Within an hour, it had over 300 likes and 24 sympathy comments. Friends offered couches. Acquaintances gasped in the comment section. A former coworker posted, Sending love. Let me know if you need wine or a lawyer. Lorraine didn't respond. She didn't even read it. But Mr. Rivas did. He was already drafting a brief public statement on behalf of Lorraine Parker to the Remington Lane Homeowners Association. Concise, clear, legally airlocked. The property located at 310 Remington Lane is solely owned by Lorraine M. Parker. All asset removals were conducted in accordance with property law. As of last week, the home has returned to its original title holder. He attached the deed, redacted for privacy. He CC'd the HOA's legal chair. He sent Lorraine a copy with the subject line, Handled, unless they escalate. That evening, Lorraine sat on Hannah's porch, a mug of Earl Grey in her lap and a quiet breeze teasing the edge of her notepad. She wasn't rattled, she was studying. Ben called at 6:07. She let it go to voicemail. He called again at 6:14. Then texted, Mom, please. Alyssa is spiraling. She cried for 2 hours. She can't sleep in that house with everything gone. I know you're upset, but please, just come by. Talk to us. Lorraine replied once. It was never about furniture. It was about what you allowed. No read receipt, no follow-up. At 8:41, Hannah opened her laptop and whistled. She posted another one. Lorraine looked over. Alyssa's face filled the frame this time, eyes glistening, voice trembling in premeditated tremor. "I've never felt so violated. We didn't even get notice. Just a truck. My daughter watched her home get gutted like it was nothing." "Now she cares about Callie's feelings," Hannah muttered. Lorraine didn't blink. Monday morning, a letter arrived at Mr. Rivas's office, an informal notice of intent to pursue emotional distress damages, attached to a screenshot of Alyssa's crying video and a bulleted list of grievances. He sent back a single-paragraph reply: "Our client has no obligation to soften the blow of someone else's entitlement, pursue a slander claim, and will counterfile for defamation, malicious misrepresentation, and restitution on use of property without consent. Have a calm week." He included a smiley face. Ben showed up that night. Lorraine didn't open the door. She watched from the second window, lights off. He stood outside for 7 minutes, pacing, palming his keys, hands on hips. A man who didn't know how to plead unless someone was already listening. He left without knocking. The next morning, Lorraine walked through the storage unit alone. The movers had organized every item with museum-level care. Her armoire stood wrapped in thick foam. Her books were sealed in climate bags. The Cypress Bay print leaned against the back wall like it had always been meant for stillness. She stood in the center of it all, crossed her arms, and breathed. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Mr. Rivas. HOA received another email from Alyssa. She wants mediation, or a public apology to reset the neighborhood narrative. Lorraine texted back just 2 words. Let her spin. She slid the phone back into her coat and walked to the exit. The sun was already up. The house, her house, stood half a mile away. Still hers, still whole, still waiting. The notice was printed on cream cardstock, clean font, bold headline, "Notice to vacate, 30 days." Lorraine used painter's tape to affix it to the center of the front door at 8:02 a.m. sharp. No drama, no audience, just one quiet woman with her rights in writing. The door creaked slightly as she stepped back. Wind pressed the page flat like a stamp of finality. By noon, the Wi-Fi was disconnected. By evening, so were the streaming services. Alyssa discovered this mid-yoga, mid-episode of her favorite reality show. The television froze on a housewife's shocked expression. Ironic, Lorraine thought, as she watched the buffering wheels spin from her perch on the front porch. Inside, Alyssa screamed. "Are you kidding me?" Ben said nothing. He sat on the stairs, staring at the vacate notice as if it might rewrite itself if he stared long enough. By day 3, the thermostat controls were locked. By day 5, the mail was redirected to Lorraine's P.O. box. On day 7, Alyssa finally started packing. Lorraine watched from the porch swing, sipping black coffee with no sugar. Boxes appeared in the hallway. Luggage thumped against the banister. Alyssa barked orders into speakerphone. "No, Diane, it's not a full eviction. It's just complicated. You know how family is." Ben retreated further, sleeping most nights on the den's pull-out couch. He left the light on until morning, as if it might keep the silence from pressing in. Lorraine didn't intervene. She didn't scold. She didn't explain. She simply existed in her home. Callie found her in the backyard on a quiet Sunday afternoon, crouched beside the raised herb garden. The girl sat beside her without a word, watching Lorraine pinch basil with surgical care. "Are we really leaving?" Callie asked. Lorraine wiped her hands on a dish towel and looked over. "Yes." Callie twisted the hem of her hoodie. "Can I still visit you?" Lorraine reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a small chain. Silver, thin, simple. At the end hung a key charm, delicate and glinting in the sun. She placed it in Callie's palm. "You always have a room." Callie didn't cry. She just nodded, closing her hand around the charm like it was heat. Alyssa appeared at the back door moments later, arms crossed. "Callie, we need to finish your room. Please." Callie looked at Lorraine. "Will you still be here when we're gone?" Lorraine smiled. Long after. That night, Alyssa packed with venom. She slammed drawers. She muttered phrases Lorraine didn't bother absorbing, snakes trying to hiss over thunder. Ben paced the kitchen, phone in hand, then put it down again. He stared at the fridge for a full 5 minutes. Eventually, he pulled the den door shut behind him with a soft click, the sound of someone making himself small. Day 13. Lorraine bought new locks. Not to rush them, just to be ready. Day 14. Alyssa stood outside on the porch, staring at the vacate notice like it had insulted her directly. "She's insane," she whispered to no one. Lorraine passed behind the curtains inside. Didn't respond, didn't need to. At 3:22 p.m., Mr. Rivas texted, "Need me to draft a move-out acknowledgement for record?" Lorraine replied with a single period. The clock wasn't just ticking, it was tolling. By day 15, Alyssa changed her Facebook status to, "Learning who really values you is a brutal blessing." By day 16, Lorraine removed the last spare key from under the front mat. By day 17, a moving quote showed up on the kitchen table, circled in red, with the handwritten note from Ben. "We'll go quietly." She left it there, unread, unreplied. At 7:45 that evening, she stepped onto the porch. Callie stood at the end of the sidewalk, waiting for her dad. Lorraine waved. Callie lifted the necklace. No words, just a nod. A promise held. Lorraine sat down in the porch chair, not to watch them leave, but to be where they could see her still standing. Inside, the walls had begun to echo. Half a home now, waiting to breathe again. She picked up her notepad, wrote one line, "Eviction isn't cruelty, it's clarity." She didn't underline it, she didn't need to. Day 30 arrived with a whisper, not a bang. The moving truck rolled in at 9:06 a.m., a boxy white rectangle that looked more like a resignation letter than a vehicle. Lorraine sat on the porch, a bone-white mug of black tea cupped between her palms, steam curling into the air like punctuation. Hannah sat beside her, one leg crossed over the other, sunglasses perched low. A second mug steamed beside her, untouched. "You sure you want to watch this part?" she asked. Lorraine didn't blink. "It's my house." Ben stepped out first. Jacket wrinkled, face unshaven. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days and had finally stopped trying to pretend he had. The movers followed. Two 20-somethings with clipboards and matching shirts. Efficient, apologetically polite. Alyssa trailed behind them, her oversized sunglasses failing to hide the fury carved deep into her jaw. She gave Lorraine a single glance, daggers dressed as disinterest, and said nothing. Lorraine raised her teacup. A toast to clarity. They began with the bedroom. Mattress wrapped in plastic, nightstands rattling with leftover lip balm and broken chargers. Lorraine watched as each item was boxed, taped, rolled down the walk she had power washed just 2 weeks earlier. One of the movers paused at the top step. "You mind if we back the truck up a little closer?" "Use the lawn," Lorraine said evenly. "It's been trampled before." Alyssa froze at the bottom of the stairs. Her voice came sharp. "We could have handled this privately." Lorraine sipped her tea. Alyssa turned to Ben. "Say something." Ben looked toward the porch. His eyes met Lorraine's for the first time in days. "You could have told us," he said softly. "We didn't think you'd actually do all this." Lorraine set the cup gently in the saucer. "You told me first," she replied. "Garage." Ben's mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. Callie appeared from the front door, backpack slung over one shoulder, arms full of stuffed animals. She climbed into the back seat of Alyssa's car without a word, but as the door closed, she turned and looked through the window. She lifted the small silver key hanging around her neck. Lorraine saw it and smiled. It wasn't a smug smile, not vindictive, just correct. Inside the house, room by room emptied. The living room echoed first. Sofa gone, bookshelves bare, the floor beneath the rug showing its sun-faded outline. Next, the guest bedroom, then the den. Even the wireless doorbell receiver got yanked from its socket like it never belonged. Hannah leaned closer. "Want me to take pictures for proof of condition?" "I already did," Lorraine murmured, before they woke up. At 11:32, the final box slid into the truck. Alyssa stood beside the open passenger door, arms crossed like a fence. "You'll be lonely here," she said. "This big house, no one around. It's going to echo. Lorraine looked at the empty driveway. The porch she'd stained with her husband one summer, the garden already inching back toward bloom. Some echoes, she said, are easier to live with than others. Alyssa scoffed. Unbelievable. She climbed into the car, slamming the door with more force than necessary. Ben lingered. He stepped forward, awkward, one hand fidgeting at his side. You really won't change your mind? He asked. Lorraine stood, walked to the edge of the porch, met his eyes, calm and unsparing. I already did, she said. Ben nodded once, not in agreement, just in recognition. The car backed out of the drive, the truck followed, and just like that, 30 days from painter's tape to keys removed, the house was empty again. Lorraine exhaled. Hannah reached for her cup at last. So, what now? Lorraine glanced at the front door, at the hallway bathed in light, at the stairs leading to rooms finally quiet. We start over, she said, but properly. She opened her notebook, turned to a new page, and wrote the first word, foundation. The house no longer echoed. It breathed. 1 week after the move-out, Lorraine walked barefoot through the upstairs hallway with a tape measure in one hand and a new rug catalog tucked beneath her arm. The scent of fresh paint lingered in the guest room, now lavender instead of beige. She had scrubbed the baseboards herself, every nail hole patched, every leftover thumbtack pulled with tweezers. She wasn't restoring the house to what it was, she was reclaiming what it could be. In the dining room, the table had returned to its original orientation. Long ways, beneath the chandelier, Michael installed himself with a swearing ladder and a borrowed drill. Lorraine placed Callie's drawing in a matted frame above the sideboard. The lines were uneven, the color bled at the corners, but the roof was red and the door was open. Underneath it, Callie had written in purple crayon, "Home is where Grandma stays." On Thursday, 6 women arrived just after noon with canvas totes, folders, and folded readers perched on their noses. They settled into the living room with iced tea and cautious laughter. Call it whatever you want, Hannah said, passing out copies of the agenda. We're not a support group, we're not a club, we're a resistance with snacks. They called it the Silver Ownership Circle. All of them had stories. One had signed over her beach house without realizing it. Another's daughter had used her credit to buy a Tesla. They didn't cry. They planned. Lorraine walked them through how to request deed copies, set up account alerts, and document every handshake they'd once called trust. By week's end, the local paper ran a piece titled, "Elders Reclaim Their Space, One Room at a Time." A reporter named Clara snapped a photo of Lorraine by the fireplace. She wore a soft blue blouse and a half-smile that looked like it had waited years to exist again. The day the article ran, Lorraine received 4 notes in her mailbox. 3 were handwritten thank yous. 1 was a typed letter in a plain envelope, no return address. The content? 1 sentence, all caps. Bitter old women die alone. Lorraine fed it into the shredder without reading it twice. Later, Hannah offered to track down the origin. I've got a nephew who can find digital footprints with nothing but a comma and a zip code. Lorraine declined. Let them scream into the void, we're already out of it. That night, while updating her files, she found a flagged email from Mr. Rivas, dated 3 weeks earlier. Subject, Unusual Lien Inquiry. URGENT it. It had gone to spam. She clicked it. The body of the message read, Lorraine, just flagged an application for a HELOC, home equity line of credit, filed under your address, submitted online through a secondary broker. Applicant, Benjamin R. Parker. Application date, 2 weeks before the garage incident. Loan was denied due to mismatch in ownership, but thought you should know. Lorraine sat still, then slowly leaned back in her chair. She read it again. Ben had tried to leverage equity from a home that was never his. She didn't scream. She didn't call. She printed the email, folded it twice, slid it into the back of her new notebook under the tab marked Interventions That Failed. She wrote 1 line beneath it. The silence wasn't ignorance. It was surveillance. Outside, a wind chime knocked gently against the porch rail. Lorraine stood and walked to the front window. A neighbor passed with her dog. She waved. Lorraine waved back. The house was hers again, but more than that, her name now echoed beyond it. In conversations between mothers and daughters, in HOA meetings and book clubs, in whispered warnings passed between retirement accounts and wills, Alyssa had filed a formal request to block the newspaper article. It had been denied. Ben hadn't texted in 8 days. Callie still sent drawings. Lorraine opened the newest one, crayons and all. This one had the house again, but this time there were flowers growing around it. The door still open, the sky still clear. She hung it on the fridge, then added one more page to her notebook. Section title, Aftermath. First entry. I kept the house. They lost the claim, but worse, he lost my name. The bank smelled like printer paper and decisions. Lorraine stepped into the branch at 9 a.m. Sharp, appointment confirmed, folder in hand. She wore slate gray slacks and her good loafers, not because she had something to prove, but because she didn't. The banker, a woman named Karina, stood as Lorraine approached. "Mrs. Parker," she said, offering a firm handshake, "we're all set up in the glass office." Inside, Lorraine placed her folder on the table. No small talk, no pleasantries. She slid a single page forward. Property title, 310 Remington Lane. Karina scanned the document, nodded. "And what would you like to do today?" Lorraine didn't hesitate. "I want to freeze it." "Excuse me?" "Place a lock on the property. Any loan, refinance, or credit activity tied to this address needs my live signature in person with a 2-step verification and a written affidavit of intent." Karina blinked. "Yes, ma'am. We can do that." "And," Lorraine added, "add a legal alert to the title. If anyone tries to list this home as an asset, you call me. Not email, not voicemail. Me." Karina's fingers moved fast. "Understood. I'll connect your title file with fraud detection and flag all lending portals." Lorraine slid a second sheet across the table. "What's this?" Karina asked. "Broker name. He processed a loan application on my home without my consent. The borrower used my address. The lender denied it, but I want it documented." Karina read the name. Her expression shifted, tightened. "We'll notify our compliance department and forward this to legal," she said. Lorraine nodded once. "Good." By 10:17 a.m., the house was no longer just protected. It was impenetrable. That afternoon, Mr. Rivas sent an official cease and desist to Ben's broker, carbon-copied to the Brokerage Compliance Board. The subject line was clinical. The body was not. "To whom it may concern, my client, Lorraine M. Parker, has retained legal documentation of an unauthorized lending attempt using her property as collateral. Your broker, knowingly or otherwise, filed an application tied to a home he had no legal stake in. This letter serves as formal notification that any future attempts to exploit 310 Remington Lane in financial applications will result in legal pursuit of fraud, damages, and restitution. Consider this your only warning." At 4:46 p.m., Lorraine's phone buzzed. "Ben." Just one line. "It was a mistake. I didn't go through with it. Please." She stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "So was thinking the garage was enough. Read receipt." No reply. That night, Lorraine sat at her writing desk beneath the living room window. She lit one candle, not for ambiance, but for clarity. Her will sat before her, marked up and ready for notarization. She reread every line, every clause. Ben's name had been removed completely. Alyssa's had never been there. She flipped to the final page. Primary beneficiaries: Callie Rose Parker, 50%, Hannah Avery Green, 50%. A key clause was added: inheritance shall not be altered at the request of non-beneficiaries, regardless of marital or blood relation. Lorraine signed slowly. The pen didn't wobble. The next morning, she walked to the storage unit alone. She opened the door, inhaled the dry quiet of guarded history. She placed a copy of the will in a fireproof safe. Beside the flatware and her wedding album, on top of it, she laid the printout of Ben's failed HELOC application. A reminder, not a warning. She locked the safe, then the unit. As she stepped back into daylight, a breeze caught her scarf, soft and clean. She adjusted it without thinking. Outside, the world was the same. Inside, everything had changed. Back at the house, she placed a fresh set of mugs on the table. Hannah was coming for tea, Callie later for lunch. No defense needed, just presence. Lorraine walked through the foyer, her foyer, and glanced at her reflection in the hallway mirror. She didn't look vindicated, she looked untouchable. And just as she turned off the hallway light, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Voicemail transcript read, "Hi. I heard you do real estate mentoring now. My mom saw the article. I was wondering if you had space." Lorraine didn't reply, but she smiled and pulled out her notebook. Next entry, "I didn't pass on a home. I passed on the lesson." Lorraine met Nadine on a Tuesday. She arrived with a battered hatchback, 2 duffel bags, and eyes that had seen every kind of leaving. Widow, 62, former public school registrar. The listing had said, "Private downstairs suite available. Quiet, clean, no judgment." She responded within hours. No haggle, just need. Lorraine showed her the garden-level room with a private bath, small kitchenette, and the softest light at sunset. Nadine blinked hard at the brightness. "Feels like a place that forgives things. Only asks you don't break what wasn't already cracked," Lorraine replied. Nadine moved in by Friday. By Saturday, the house laughed again. The sound didn't echo, it landed. Nadine cooked gumbo on her first night, from scratch. Spices bloomed up the stairwell like memory. She played vinyl records in the evenings, Aretha, Emmylou, the occasional Dolly. She didn't fill the silence with talk, but she never ran from it either. Lorraine found she liked the balance. Respect, like good plaster, held everything up. Hannah dropped by the next week with a USB microphone and a question. "Still interested in that podcast?" Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "You know," Hannah said, adjusting the mic stand. "All the stuff no one warned us about. Inheritance betrayal, power of attorney politics, that moment your daughter-in-law politely asks if you'd mind waiting in the garage." Lorraine smiled. They called it Second Signatures and recorded at the kitchen table on alternating Thursdays. First episode, "The house is not a gift, it's a record." The downloads weren't massive, but steady. A local elder law attorney shared it on LinkedIn. A Facebook group of retired nurses requested an interview. One caller left a voicemail that simply said, "Thank you for saying what we whisper." Callie listened too. She came every weekend now, dropped off with less and less drama each time. She brought cookies, mostly pre-made dough, but always baked herself. She'd sit on the back steps and tell Lorraine about school, or ask Nadine how to pronounce the herbs in the garden. She never took off her necklace. One Sunday, while slicing strawberries for breakfast, Callie said, "You should write a book." Lorraine glanced up. "You've got notebook stacks taller than me," Callie added, grinning. Lorraine didn't answer, but her hand reached almost unconsciously for the pen on the counter. That afternoon, an email arrived in her inbox, from Alyssa. Subject line, Callie Body. Text, "Lorraine, we've had time to reflect. Ben and I would like to meet, not for us, for Callie. If there's any way we could reconnect for her sake, we'd be open to it." Lorraine read it once, then clicked reply. She typed 3 words, "You had space." She didn't elaborate, didn't sign it. She clicked send, then returned to the kitchen, where Nadine was pouring orange juice into mismatched glasses. "You good?" Nadine asked, sliding one across the counter. Lorraine nodded. "Very." That night, they recorded Episode 4, The Cost of Courtesy. Hannah read aloud a submitted story from a retired librarian who'd unknowingly co-signed a HELOC for her nephew. Lorraine followed with 3 estate planning steps and one final note. "You are allowed to choose who inherits your calm." Callie drew them cover art for the show. 2 women at a kitchen table, a house behind them, roots curling into the floorboards. Lorraine taped it to the refrigerator. She looked at it every morning. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the front room caught firelight through the drapes, Lorraine stood at the threshold between hall and home. She watched Nadine laughing with Hannah about something podcast-related. She smelled cinnamon toast. She heard Callie humming upstairs, and she realized the house hadn't filled, it had aligned. Her phone buzzed once, a notification from their podcast app, 1,000 downloads. No confetti, no banners, just proof that her voice had landed, without needing to raise itself. She opened her notebook. Next entry. Legacy isn't who remembers your name, it's who stops being afraid to say their own. She underlined it. Once, softly, but with full intention. The mic was live, the room quiet. Lorraine adjusted her glasses, took a sip of warm lemon tea, and leaned toward the mic as Hannah tapped the record button. Episode 5, Hannah began, voice even. Today's story is submitted anonymously, but if you've ever been asked to wait in a garage, this one's for you. A pause. Then Lorraine spoke, her words deliberate, steady, shaped more by memory than malice. Once I owned a home, then I shared it, then I was slowly erased from it, not loudly, just in the little ways, until one day I wasn't even asked inside. No names, no cities, no direct identifiers, but the story spilled out, chapter by chapter. She described the furniture inventory, the deed, the removal morning, not as confession, but as record. Hannah listened, occasionally added legal context, but mostly she let Lorraine carry it. At the end, Lorraine said only one thing. I wasn't reclaiming a house. I was reclaiming the right to be seen where I already stood. She tapped the mic off. The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was earned. 3 days later, the download counter tripled. The episode was shared on 3 elder law firm newsletters and picked up by a popular estate planning subreddit titled, When Grandma Has Receipts. One comment read, I sent this to my mom. She cried, then she called her lawyer. Another, this woman needs to teach a masterclass in revenge architecture. Callie listened during a car ride home. She didn't say much, but that weekend, she brought Lorraine a new drawing, this time of a house wrapped in ribbons, the front door shaped like a microphone. We went viral, Hannah said on Sunday, holding up her phone. We're officially local influencers. Should I get a ring light? Lorraine smiled. Only if we're doing glam shots in the herb garden. They laughed, the kind that stretched from the belly. Later that afternoon, Lorraine pulled Callie aside and opened a small velvet box. Inside sat a delicate chain, finer than the first, gold this time, with a new charm, a tiny open book. For the stories, Lorraine said, and for the ones you'll write. Callie's eyes widened. Is it real? Very. She wore it immediately, necklace layered over necklace, legacy stacked gently against skin. That evening, Lorraine refreshed the inbox tied to the podcast. A new message from alyssa.parker.home@gmail.com. Subject, formal objection to defamatory content. I am aware that episode 5 refers to our family. I am consulting legal counsel regarding potential libel and emotional harm. I urge you to take down the episode before we are forced to escalate. Lorraine didn't reply. She forwarded it to Mr. Rivas. His response came 15 minutes later. Defamation requires a name. You gave none. What you shared is not legally liable, it's just inconveniently true. He added a smiley face. Lorraine didn't smile, but she closed the laptop with finality. Nadine appeared in the doorway, holding a tray of warm ginger cookies. Want a midnight snack, or are we fasting in fury tonight? Lorraine accepted a cookie. Always snacks, never silence. Nadine winked. That should be the next episode. That night, Lorraine sat in bed with her notebook. She flipped to the page titled, New Rules. She added a line. Tell the truth loud enough, and it doesn't matter who's listening, only that you said it. At 2:13 a.m., another ping arrived. Callie had uploaded a new version of their podcast art to the shared folder. The title font was now bold, and beneath the house, she'd drawn roots that turned into words. No one needed to ask what they meant. They were the words Lorraine had spoken at the end of that episode. I wasn't left behind. I was paused. And now? She'd pressed play. The post wasn't from Lorraine. It came from a mid-tier blogger who specialized in estate planning and senior financial safety, a man named Leo Griggs, with a tucked-in flannel and a quiet vendetta against predatory family dynamics. His headline read, "When the deed speaks louder than the drama, how one widow legally reclaimed her home." He didn't name Lorraine, but he cited second signatures, linked public records from the county register, and attached a screenshot of Alyssa's now-deleted post lamenting her sudden displacement. The story caught flame in the comments. "Protect your elders, especially when they're the smartest ones in the house. This woman is my Roman Empire. Printed this out for Thanksgiving. Just in case." By midweek, the podcast jumped into the top 50 in the education category on Spotify. Hannah read the comments aloud from Lorraine's kitchen, still in slippers. "You're a folk hero now." Lorraine stirred her tea. "Feels more like a public service announcement with heat." By Thursday, the Silver Ownership Circle had 4 new members, all from neighborhoods. All from neighborhoods Lorraine had never stepped foot in. One brought banana bread, another brought deeds. Meanwhile, Alyssa vanished. Her social media pages were deactivated. A family photo from 2021 still appeared on Google, but it now linked to a broken profile. Her name, once coded in curated posts about skincare, minimalist parenting, and lifestyle hacks, was now buried beneath articles about intergenerational theft and boundary law. Lorraine hadn't spoken her name aloud in days. She didn't need to. The work was doing the speaking for her. On Friday morning, an envelope slid through Lorraine's mail slot. No return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Inside, one folded note torn at the bottom, written in Ben's familiar blue ink. "I messed up. Bad. I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but I wanted to say it anyway." Lorraine read it once, then walked to the office, opened her filing cabinet, and pulled out a copy of the HELOC application, the one stamped "Denied" in bold across the top. She placed it in an envelope and slid Ben's note inside. On the back, she wrote, "So did I. I thought silence meant safety. It didn't." She mailed it that afternoon. No return address. That evening, Callie arrived with a box of oatmeal raisin cookies and a new drawing rolled into a paper towel tube. Lorraine unscrolled it at the dining room table. The lines were tighter now, more confident. A woman stood in the middle of a lawn holding a giant gold key. The house behind her was beaming. Callie grinned. "It's you, guardian of the door." Lorraine smiled. "You got my nose wrong." "I always do." They laughed. Later, Hannah stopped by, breathless with another update. "Estate Law Weekly just quoted you, not by name, but the podcast. You're now officially an anonymous case study in elder-led restitution." Lorraine blinked. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," Hannah said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "But also iconic." The next morning, Lorraine sat on the porch with her notebook and a printout of the blog post in her lap. A sticky note fluttered from the top. It was from Nadine. "They took your chair. You built a stage." Lorraine underlined the sentence. "Once. Slowly." The breeze was cool, the air carrying the early scent of rain. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt positioned. Later that day, a delivery arrived. No return name, just a padded envelope addressed to Lorraine Parker. Inside, a tiny brass plate engraved with one sentence. "You reminded us where the keys belong." She set it gently beside Callie's drawing, then opened her notebook to a fresh page. New section title, Voice Filed. At the bottom, she wrote, "I never needed revenge. I needed to remind them whose name the house remembered." And outside, as the rain began to tap softly across the porch roof, Lorraine closed the book, not to end the story, but to turn the page. Ben asked to meet at a diner halfway between their homes. He picked one Lorraine used to visit with Michael on Sundays, formica tables, weak coffee, and booths that had seen more confessions than communion. She arrived 6 minutes early, not to control the moment, just to see who he'd become walking through a door he hadn't earned. He came in 2 minutes late, wearing khakis that didn't fit quite right and a button-down that hadn't seen an iron. No Alyssa, no dramatics. Just a man who looked like gravity had pressed on him too long without asking. Lorraine didn't stand. She didn't reach for a hug. She just waited. Ben slid into the booth, eyes puffy, jaw tight. The waitress came, coffee for both, cream left untouched. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice graveled. Lorraine sipped. "You asked." He didn't answer right away. Then, "I know I can't undo any of it. I wanted to sit across from you without anything in between. No paperwork, no podcast, no keychains." Lorraine looked at him. Not through him. Not around him. Just directly. Ben inhaled, eyes glistening now. "I should have said no. When Alyssa asked you to wait in the garage, I should have said something then, or the next day, or the one after. But you didn't," Lorraine said quietly. "I know," he said, and now the tears broke clean down his cheeks. "I didn't want to lose peace in the house. I thought I could fix it later, that it would pass." Lorraine placed her mug down with precision. "Peace, bought by silence, always comes due." Ben nodded, swiping at his face with the cuff of his sleeve. "I've been trying. I got a temp job at a property office downtown. Not glamorous, but I'm learning. I want to earn my place again." She watched him fumble for the check like it was proof of transformation, but she reached it first. Her card was already in the holder. "I didn't come here to offer a place," she said. "I came here to hear what you'd say when you weren't asking for one." Ben's hands trembled slightly. "Then what now?" Lorraine reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a letter. It was a flyer for an estate planning workshop she and Hannah were hosting next month at the Civic Center. The title read, "Boundaries Before Wills, Building While You're Still Alive." She slid it across the table. "Start by fixing your own," she said, "not asking for mine." Ben stared at it, then at her, and he didn't push it back. He folded it gently and tucked it into his coat pocket like something he'd have to unfold more than once before he understood it. "I miss Callie," he said softly. "She doesn't need missing," Lorraine replied. "She needs modeling." He nodded again. Not broken, not whole, just aware. They sat a moment longer. 2 coffees, 1 check. When they stood, Ben hesitated, like he might hug her after all. But Lorraine stepped back just enough. No promises, only parting. Outside, the wind had picked up. Lorraine wrapped her scarf tighter, watched as Ben walked to his car with his head down, his back hunched not in shame, but in effort. The kind that might turn, might not. She didn't wait to find out. That night, Callie baked banana muffins from scratch. Nadine overcooked the rice. Hannah called to ask if they'd been officially canceled yet, or if they were still folk heroes. Lorraine didn't answer the phone right away. She stood at the dining room window, looking out over her yard. The garden was growing again, uncoaxed, just finding light. She opened her notebook, flipped to a page she'd once left blank, and wrote, "Some things can be replanted, but not all roots are welcome back." The morning was ordinary. That was the power of it. No announcement, no windfall, just light through the bay window and the soft creak of polished floorboards under bare feet. Lorraine walked from room to room, coffee in one hand, notebook in the other, as if taking roll call. The living room. Quiet, intentional, no clutter. Just the bay print on the wall, the armoire in its rightful corner, and the woven throw folded neatly over the arm of the couch. She touched it in passing, her mother's stitches still holding. The kitchen smelled like lemon and flour. A photo sat in a brass frame near the kettle, her and Callie in aprons, mid-laugh, powdered sugar on both their faces. Lorraine didn't remember the camera being there, but she remembered the moment. In the hallway, the framed flyer from their first workshop now hung beneath the thermostat. "Boundaries before wills, building while you're still alive." Someone had scribbled in the margin, "Truth is a deed, too." Lorraine had left it there on purpose. In the backyard, the garden had stretched itself back to life. The basil was knee-high. The mint had curled around the edge of its bed like it remembered who planted it. Birds picked through the feeder, unfazed by people or podcasts. At 10 sharp, Hannah arrived with a pitcher of lemonade and a stack of printouts. "Student groups coming in an hour. I made a worksheet. Don't mock the font." Lorraine flipped through the pages. "You used Comic Sans. Justice doesn't have to be Helvetica," Hannah shot back, pouring 2 glasses. They sat on the porch swing, sipping and watching the driveway for cars that hadn't yet pulled in. "What are you calling this week's topic?" Hannah asked. Lorraine tapped the paper. "Ownership as architecture. Poetic. Practical." Inside, Nadine was prepping the table. Carrot sticks, iced water, a bowl of wrapped granola bars. She believed in feeding minds and bodies equally and simultaneously. It had become her silent ministry. The first car arrived at 10:42, then another. 5 students in total, community college learners, 1 recent retiree reinventing late, and a 20-year-old with questions about estate transfers after divorce. Lorraine welcomed them all with the same sentence: "Take any seat. But don't take space you haven't earned." They listened. They learned. They asked. And when they left, they thanked her, not for the information, for the tone, for the permission, for the example. Later, Callie arrived after school with 2 lemon bars in a napkin and a book tucked under her arm. She hugged Lorraine quick, dropped her bag by the door, and took her usual spot by the front window. "Reading anything good?" Lorraine asked. Callie held up the cover. "Anne of Green Gables." "Classic," Lorraine said. "She's bold," Callie replied. "Like you." Lorraine sat nearby, not speaking, just present, the kind of silence that feels like a full sentence. She glanced around the room again. This house had survived not just loss, but erosion. It had been co-opted, misnamed, dismissed. But it stood now, every room intentional, every object chosen, every corner hers. Nadine passed behind them with a vase of fresh tulips. Hannah was already back on her laptop, drafting the next episode notes. The herb garden caught the last of the sun outside the kitchen window. The wind knocked gently at the shutters but didn't intrude. Callie turned the page of her book. Lorraine watched her, lips moving slightly, eyes dancing left to right. Her fingers absent-mindedly touched the key charm and book pendant that still hung side by side from her neck. "You can't crowd someone who owns the foundation," Lorraine murmured. No one answered. They didn't need to, because for the first time in years the home didn't feel borrowed, it didn't feel staged, it didn't feel threatened. It felt right. Lorraine stood, moved toward the door. She paused once at the threshold, looking back at the girl, the chairs, the light. Then she whispered, not aloud, not for others, just for the walls to remember. "They asked me to wait. I chose to reclaim.